We do want to offer a trigger warning. If you struggle with body image, if you struggle with kind of self-love, some of the things we talk about might be a little bit difficult, but we hope that the way that we address this will be done with compassion and understanding. I'm a disabled person myself, so I have struggled a lot with body image. And so I understand how difficult that can be. So we just want to put that out there, that if you're listening, know that you are supported.
Hopefully this will be a healthy conversation.
Yes.
That'll just get you thinking and perhaps ready to have some conversations with people in your own life about these topics.
100%. So we're going to start our lovely podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's been a year.
Not quite.
No, we just came from one.
Yes, but it hasn't been like a 12-month span.
You're right. Yes. Welcome to the S.H.A.R.E podcast, where we talk about sex, relationships, and culture. We are your hosts, Carl and
Kassia.
Yep. And we are excited. I think this is going to be a great podcast. We're going to talk about an unfiltered resolution and what that means.
What does that mean?
I think, that's a great question.
Oh.
It means, as far as the way we're framing it,
yes.
We're asking the question, what would it look like to be unfiltered? What would it look like to actually be more your authentic self, to kind of love the skin you're in? A lot of New Year's resolutions come with this idea of like, I want to change myself. I want to change the way I look. And sometimes those are healthy. If it's within the realm of like just wanting to be a healthier person, but sometimes it's because we want to achieve some sort of bar or standard or living up with the Joneses / Kardashians that we're going to talk about later. That can come from an unhealthy place. So we want to talk about, what does it look like to be unfiltered and authentic?
Okay.
How's
I'm
that sound?
excited.
You sounds good?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I think it'll be good.
It's just us though. There's no guest, but I think that we have a lot to offer on this topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
So the first question that we have.
Actually, Carl.
Yes.
Before we start this podcast.
Yes.
If you haven't listened to our last podcast, go take a listen. It's a Christmas special, but Christmas can be year round.
Especially if your name is Sarah Gilman and
who
you are
may have been our guest.
Yeah, who may have been
episode.
our guest, and also known as Princess Snickerdoodle.
Take a listen if you haven't.
It's such a great show. It's such a great show. So yeah, New Year's resolutions. Why do we think that people make New Year's resolutions? What do you think?
I think a lot of the time it's just kind of like an assumed thing that people do. Growing up in school, it's kind of like, what's your resolution? What are you changing this year? Somehow the calendar date changes and it's like, oh, we're going to be new people now.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
It is a weird thing. It's like, the clock is going to strike midnight and you're going to turn into a pumpkin.
New year, new me.
New year, new me. New year, new me.
But not actually. New me.
Yeah. I think it's because also like a lot of times we look back on the past year and we think about, what are things that we want to change? Or a lot of times during the New Year's, it's a time where people are like, okay, well, what actually happened last year? Let's reminisce a bit.
Yeah.
Which I think can be healthy if especially you're going to be like, okay, let me sit down and process. Let me celebrate the wins. Let me actually grieve the losses. And that can be a very healthy thing. But I think when it moves into sometimes of like, oh, well, I didn't do this, and like starting to beat yourself up, and this is something I need to change, because we start looking back at last year, we look at only our faults, and then we look in the mirror and we still see our faults, and we only see our faults in front of us. And we don't have that support around us.
Yeah.
It can be really, really, really challenging.
One thing too, for especially high school students and college university students, is January generally means a new semester. So new classes, new relationships, new teachers. maybe like new work schedules, like so many different things, which especially in a time of life where you're in a semestered kind of structure, the new year is a very big marker for that.
Yeah.
Once you're an adult, not as much, because if you're working year round, it's kind of just same old, get a couple days off maybe and then back to work. But I remember when I was in school, it was always like, oh yeah, January. Okay. Like what am I going to change in terms of my study habits or my work habits? Or now that my class schedule has changed, what else do I need to change in my life to kind of make it all work?
Now that my grades have come in, what do I need to do
We don't talk about that one.
We don't talk about grades?
No. Well, it depends.
Yeah. Like now that like my grades have come in, like, you know, there's stress and pressure to like reinvent yourself, right? So we're going to be looking at those things. We're going to be looking at what does it look like to make it to be resolute in yourself and also to move forward in a healthy way.
Yeah.
How to make resolutions in a healthy way, how to live a more authentic, like we said, unfiltered life, and some tools that, you know, parents and educators can use to talk to their students and their own teens about this stuff.
Yeah.
So the first question that we have, because on the S.H.A.R.E podcast, we talk about sex, relationships, and culture, is our question about specifically looking at this idea of New Year's resolution through this kind of filtered lens of sexuality. So the question that I actually got this year was, how does an over-sexualized culture influence the narrative around body image? This is something that I was asked by a college student back in September. Like, how does a sexualized culture influence the narrative around body image? And I think it does significantly. I think the narrative around body image is this almost this thing where the more sexualized you are, the more value you have, especially on social media. Like, have you experienced this?
I would say yes, that is true, 100%. But also on the flip side, there's also sometimes, especially in schools, kind of the idea of like the more sexualized you are, the more looked down you are and shamed you are in some circles.
Okay.
So it's kind of weird because there is this sense of like, yes, I'm going to post myself on social media because I have like the sexy body type and all the boys are after me. But then other people may be like, okay, but you're like posting all these things and flaunting yourself and like look down on you and may use derogatory terms, like be like, hey, like she's a whore or he's like an F-boy, you know, and just going around. So it's interesting because you kind of can get a bit of both, I find.
Yeah. And that's like, it's almost like this dichotomy where it's like, you want to be valued. And so what society values is this sexualized image, a sex appeal, like all the likes, all the thumbs up, all the hearts, all like the hot sweating emoji faces that people are after for validation. And then on the flip side, the just real negative comments that of body shaming, even for an over-sexualized image.
Well, and the other interesting thing too is the idea of what the sexual appeal when it comes to body images is so drastically different.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's like, oh, you want the like skinny bikini body with the abs, but then you want to be slim, thick and also have the curves, but like only certain curves, not all the curves. And then other times like, no, you want all the curves. So like depending on the day, depending on the social media platform, depending on what school you go to, the idea of what the sexualized body image is can drastically differ.
So how do we then deconstruct this narrative or how can we twist it in a way that we can understand that the body can be beautiful and at the same time not be over sexualized? Or how can we deconstruct this idea of like consuming the image of another person and their sexuality for our own kind of self-gratification and change that into a celebration of a person's body and a celebration of what sexuality actually is?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing we can do in terms of deconstructing kind of these standards around body image is realizing that like there's no right or wrong way to have a body. I remember one time I was at a friend's house and she had a sign up in her bathroom and it was a picture of all of these cactuses that were all different shapes, sizes. And beside it, it just said, there's no wrong way to have a body.
Yeah. Love
And
that.
that image stuck with me so much that I found the same kind of picture thing online, ordered one, have it up in my room. I've had it up beside my mirror for years, just as like a reminder, like there's no right or wrong way to have a body or to look. There's no one that's better. There's no one that's worse. That isn't what defines you as a person. So that also like doesn't define you sexually, right?
Yeah.
Like your body image and the way your body looks doesn't make you more sexual, less sexual. You are a person, therefore you are a sexual being.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. You are a person, therefore you're a sexual being, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And I think that understanding that, because, people are given different types of bodies, people are given different types of ways that they look and their appearance. It is okay to look at somebody and say like, that's a beautiful person.
Yeah.
And you can do that without sexualizing them.
Yeah.
And, you can do that in a way that actually honors their body and actually like celebrates that person as a person. And it doesn't have to go into the realm of being pornographic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like you can look at someone's eyes and be like, those are beautiful eyes. That doesn't have to be a sexual thing. You can look at someone's body and say, hey, like you have a beautiful body. I say that to my friends, like, hey, you're beautiful. It's not in a sexual way per se. It's just saying like you are a person and you are a beautiful person, not because of what you look like on the outside, but because of who you are, because of your character, because of the relationship we have and the memories we share. It's not all about your sexual appeal, whatever that may be or may not be.
100%. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's real good. I think getting away from this kind of fear around seeing other bodies or seeing people and thinking one of two things, either, this image that I'm seeing is super sexual. And so like, I have to lean into that thought of, over sexualization. And the fact that, because this is a sexual image, I'm going to like it. You can easily just turn that around and be like, I don't have to like this because it's a sexual image. I can actually celebrate this because this is a beautiful person. And I think that's something that we should begin to start embracing more, because not everything is about sex.
What?
I know.
Oh,
it's crazy. A lot of things are about
Newsflash.
sex. A lot of things are about sex, and that's also okay. But not everything has to be about sex. We don't have to determine somebody's value by how sexually attractive we find them. We can just say that they're attractive. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Cool.
So this moves us into, because we're talking about looking at other people and understanding body images and understanding that all body images are the same. This story then kind of begins to change and flip itself. Like when we talk about how then do we have these conversations within the context of relationships? Have you ever had, Kassia, experiences within your own relationships regarding maybe how your body looks, or have had people try to give you advice about your own body within the context of like either like a peer relationship, friend relationship, parent relationship, that you can offer advice on when we're sharing and talking with each other?
Yeah. I think kind of one thing that comes to mind like in that regard is a couple years ago, I was diagnosed with a chronic disease, which impacts my digestive system. So that has a lot to do with food and eating and stuff. So when that's impacted, your weight naturally will fluctuate. And like when I was talking with my doctors and stuff, when I was getting diagnosed, they were like, we will help you kind of monitor this and keep an eye on it. But like fluctuation is normal. It's okay. But let us know if there's anything drastic and just check in so we can make sure you're healthy. And anyway, so as this process was going on and they were kind of trying to figure out like medications and like what was going to work for kind of restabilizing my body, I started to lose a lot of weight.
Okay.
And I would get comments all the time like, hey, like what diet are you on? Like you look so good. Or like, hey, like you're looking so healthy. Like you must be working out all the time. And in my head, I was like, I'm probably the sickest that I've ever been in my life.
Yeah. I
need to sleep for 12 hours a day. And even then I'm still like exhausted 24/7. So I don't really know how to respond to you. And I would just be like, I don't know, man, I can't eat. So here we are. And yeah, I think there's like a big thing kind of that I started to realize, like people make so many comments about weight, and especially like in our North American culture, often what's praised is the skinny body type, especially when it comes to girls. And so it's like, if you're losing weight, you must be healthy. When in reality, like, that is not at all true. The like whole BMI, like body mass index, and like weight ranges are not accurate. Everyone has a different body type. Everyone has different things that are going to be better or worse for their body. For me, being skinny was not healthy. It was the sickest that I've been, right? So for some people, like, being skinny is their natural body type, having a slim body. I still am like a tinier person compared to a lot of people. But it's like, that doesn't determine my health or not my health. For me, putting weight back on from when people were commenting on my body was healthier for me. So I think that's just like a big thing to remember, that skinny doesn't equal healthy. Whatever is healthy for your body, when you are eating enough that is nutritious, when you aren't tired all the time, when you can be active to whatever extent that looks like for you, that is what's healthy.
Yeah. And I think, thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of vulnerability. So I appreciate that. Yeah. I feel like there's this idea of, you know, you need to look a certain way, or you need to be a certain weight in order to be healthy. And that's like pushed on. And I've also heard other, especially when it comes to, like, if we're talking to younger people, in my own life, having heard other parents commenting on my weight growing up to my mom, about like how I'm overweight, and I have a disability, so I have it's, the fancy word is familiar spastic diplegia. It basically manifests as cerebral palsy. Big word. I'll say it again for the ones in the back. Familiar spastic diplegia. But yeah, like being commented about, like, and other parents would comment on my weight, and people comment on my weight all the time. And what's really interesting, especially when it comes to like how adults interact with young people, or parents, how they talk with their teenagers. Dr. Rachel Rodgers, who's an associate professor at the Department of Applied Psychology at Northeastern University in Boston, she gives this advice. She says parents should avoid commenting on their children's weight, appearance, and that includes criticism, teasing, or even positive statements, which I thought was really interesting, because she said even like positive statements, commenting on that might not be the best.
I think that even may be, though, like, because you perceive something as positive doesn't necessarily mean that it will be taken in a positive way. For example, when people were telling me, oh, you look so healthy, like you've lost so much weight, they probably meant it in a positive way. Yeah. But it was not received in a positive way.
Yeah, because people don't know what people are going through.
Yeah. So I think there are some positive statements you could make, like, hey, like, that shirt really, you know, like, brings out your natural, like, eye color or something. Or things that aren't like, oh, you're so skinny, or you look so overweight, like, whatever. Like, staying kind of away from that, but more so just like, hey, your eyes look great today. Yeah. Or, hey, that outfit really suits you. Like, you look really good. I think it's a very different kind of positive statement than commenting on, like, oh, you look so skinny, or oh, you look like you lost weight.
Yeah, specifically the weight thing. And Dr. Rodgers continues, and she said that parents specifically should avoid encouraging their children to diet or suggesting they need to lose weight. They should avoid not allowing certain foods, telling their children that certain foods are bad, or trying to restrict their children's diets.
Unless you have an allergy, or your doctor has advised you to do so.
Very, very true.
Is what I would say. But yes.
Yeah. Parents who reward their children's good behavior with food increase the likelihood that they will grow up to be more unhappy with their bodies. Food should be linked to alleviating hunger. This is so important. Like, I remember when I was younger, food was like a reward. And so if I did something good, like we would go to get McDonald's, or if I, got an A, we'd get ice cream. It was like the good, tasty foods was used as a rewards, which inherently isn't like a bad thing sometimes, but when it's done repetitively and often, it can produce this idea, this psychological thing where, like, when I'm feeling bad, or when I feel like I need to reward myself, I'll go to like unhealthy food.
Well, even the idea that some food is good and some food is bad. Food is food.
Food is food.
It's not good or bad. there may be some foods that are not as healthy for your body in excess, but all things in moderation are generally okay.
Yes, and Rodgers continues on with that exact thought, that parents can model positive attitudes about food, eating meals with their children, and making them enjoyable. They should explain that most images in media are unrealistic and unrepresentative, but it doesn't stop there. As part of the positive modeling, parents should avoid commenting on their own weight and appearance as well, or anyone else's. They should avoid skipping meals themselves or going on diets, especially like these crazy fad diets.
Yeah.
Young women might over-remember comments their parents make, but Rodgers says that limitations of recall affect both parties, and parents may under-remember, so it's best not to comment at all. Not only just young women, but like I remember as a young man being commented by parents and people who were, that I looked up to on my body. And like the comments that sometimes really hurt. And then when I would go back and talk to them, because they're just saying things like in general, they're like, oh, I don't even remember saying that. And I'm like, that was a crucial, critical moment of like my development as a person. and now I feel like I have this trauma associated with this. And you don't even remember.
Well, and like along those lines, kind of like what the end part of that quote was saying too, like, the way that you as like a parent or a mentor or just as an older person in a young person's life talk about food and your weight and how you come on other people, that sticks because kids pick up on everything.
100%.
Teenagers pick up on everything. And even if they may not realize it at the time, like it starts to subconsciously create these ideas in their head. So if you're constantly being like, oh, I can't eat this because, I'm going to gain weight, or, oh, I'm on a diet, I can't eat that. Your kids are going to start to see that and be like, hey, well, like, mom's never eating like these things when we go out, so it must be bad. So like I shouldn't eat those things, which can do a lot for a kid, right? Because they don't necessarily understand carbs and calories and all of those things, nor do they need to. Food is food. All things are good in moderation.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these stigmas around food are influenced by the culture that we live in. Influence around trying to attain or reach this social standard that we kind of put on.
Food's almost become like an art form here, right? Like its own thing of pleasure. Whereas in a lot of other countries, food is just what you need to survive. You need as much as you need to get you through the day, to make it to tomorrow. Whereas here we have so much food in so much excess that, again, like it's just everywhere and people talk about it, and it's not like, oh, I'm eating to survive. It's I'm eating for pleasure, which is a big difference. And some people, yes, like depending on where you are eating for survival. But when it's for pleasure, I think that's where a lot of these things that we're talking about are coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, 100%. And again, this is not like generally across the board. Of course, there are different situations that are different.
Groceries are very expensive right now.
Yeah. And, but there's this idea of like achieving some sort of invisible standard that doesn't help with this whole conversation.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads us to our final question, which was brought to me by, I was doing a presentation and a student mentioned something around filters, right? And like what we see online and all of these pressures that we feel like we have to kind of fit into these boxes or grab some sort of invisible brass ring. And like social media is rampant with these filters.
Yes.
To the point that there's this thing on there's this thing on TikTok where people like hold up the filter and they'll be like, this is not my face. This is my face. And it's like it almost looks like a completely different person.
Yeah.
So we only see and we only show what we think culture will accept on social media. Like a lot of these filters, they will change our appearances so that we actually don't see the truth. We don't kind of live in this authentic, like this is just who I am, unfiltered.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to kind of grasp at this social standard. We've gone from basically keeping up with the Joneses to keeping up with the Kardashians.
Explain, please.
Yes, no problem. So an article written by J.D. Roth states that Keeping Up with the Joneses debuted on March 31st, 1913. That was only 2 years before I was born. Did you know that?
Dinosaur.
The New York. It was written in the New York Globe, and the strip is a domestic comedy following a family of social climbers, the McGinnises. Various strips feature the McGinnis family attempting to match the lifestyle of their neighbors, the Joneses, who are often mentioned but never seen. The strip was later picked up by Joseph Pulitzer's The New York World and was subsequently syndicated in many other papers by the Associated newspapers. The title and central conceit of the family struggling to keep up with their neighbors resonated with its audience to the point that the phrase "keeping up with the Joneses" became a natural catchphrase.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this whole idea I think is so fascinating. And I really think it's really interesting within the narrative that the Joneses are never seen.
Yeah.
And I think it's because this whole idea of keeping up with the Joneses is something that we take on for ourselves. Like we don't actually see the Joneses because the Joneses don't exist.
The grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah, and that's what we think. Like we think that the grass is always
Yeah.
greener, that there's always something better, that like we can never like fully accept ourselves. And it's all a figment of our own imagination.
Yeah.
Like even people who post on social media, these celebrities, if you actually like sit down and talk to them or listen to their interviews, like they're just real people going through real things.
I think the thing too with social media that we sometimes forget is it's maybe 1% of someone's life, right?
Yes.
They post one picture, generally of a highlight of like their day, their week, whatever. It's generally an exciting moment or everyone's smiling or laughing or something fun, but you don't see everything that's led to that moment and everything that comes after. And I know there are some people on social media and some celebrities that try to sometimes post something and be like, hey, you know, like this is reality. Like not everything you see on social media
There goes
is
gravity.
true, which yes, that can help. But still when the majority of things that you're seeing on social media is all these positive images, it's hard to kind of balance that out and to remember that, hey, this is not reality. A perfect life is not reality.
Yeah. Well, we think because like we live in the TikTok, Facebook / Meta / TikTok, Snapchat. I don't know all of the things world. We think that what we see online is the standard.
Yeah.
That is the goal. This is what we should be achieving. And it's not. It's this fabrication. It's this filtered idea. That doesn't mean that all social media is fake.
No,
but
not at all.
there's a lot on there that where people just kind of are trying to put their best foot forward.
Yeah.
Well,
even like, for example, you see videos perhaps like I remember in high school, you would see videos of like groups of people all hanging out, you know, going out to a party or out to the movies or whatever it may be. But then like talking to like my friends, like before those things like that they'd be going to, you don't see like the tears, the changing outfits 20 times because you're like, this makes me look fat, or I don't like my curves in this, and all of the overthinking that goes into those things. That's not to say that you don't have a great time once you actually get out and kind of let all of the overthinking go, but all of the lead up to that, and sometimes the after results. Sometimes someone makes a really hurtful comment when you're out having that great time, and then afterwards, that is what stays in your head for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
So not to say, right, like that all social media is bad, and it can be a really great tool for keeping in touch with people, different things, especially like in terms of online support. Sometimes like there is a lot of really great online support that comes from social media, but not everything you see on social media is real.
Most of what we see on social media is the stock images.
Yeah.
We see those stock image
The filters.
captures, those filters.
Yeah.
And we don't see the process behind it. So if you want to wave goodbye to the proverbial Joneses, the one things you're always trying to keep up with, you have to quit paying attention to them. This is what J.D. Roth continues in his article. And he says, you have to quit paying attention to these things. You have to make the conscious effort not to care about what they own or do. Instead, focus on your own goals, your own needs. What you want or need to own shouldn't be defined by what other people have. It should be based on what you want to do in life and what brings you intrinsic happiness. So if you have New Year's resolution of, maybe, getting into better shape, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing, as long as it's kept within the context of this is something that I'm going to do for myself, because I think I will be healthier if I lose weight, or if I, want to gain muscle. That will make me feel happier. Not because I'm trying to keep up with the guy who's, saying, go to the gym.
Well, even just like moving your body 10 minutes a day can do great things in terms of like chemicals that your brain is releasing, in terms of just like getting some blood flowing in your body. Nothing to do with like changing your body at all. Just like a little bit of movement can do a lot.
Yeah, and just feeling more comfortable.
Yeah.
So a tool that we want to, like, if you're a parent or an educator and you're working with youth, something we want to share with you that you can say and how you can encourage young people to go into this more unfiltered, healthier mindset is to create an atmosphere, one, of safety, and two, of openness, by telling young people that they're not alone in what they think or feel.
Yeah.
For example, you could say something like, it's normal to have body image days that aren't the best, like where I look in the mirror or you look in the mirror and you're not really happy with what you see. That's okay, and that's normal. Some days you don't feel comfortable in your body. That is a normal thing to feel. And instead of wrapping that around fear or around shame, just be like, it's okay. Every day, like some days you're gonna have bad days where you don't really feel the best, and some days you're gonna have great days when you're gonna look in the mirror and be like, I look great.
Yeah. Well, even like from a female perspective, going through your menstrual cycle for most people is about a 28-day cycle. In that 28-day cycle, your body fluctuates and changes.
Yeah.
So it's very normal for girls throughout, like a month, to have days when a pair of pants might not fit the same, or where you just feel gross and bloated, because that's your body's natural way of working through its hormonal cycle. So just acknowledge, like, you may have a day where you're just bloated and don't feel good. It's not necessarily because you ate bad or because you didn't sleep enough or all in your head. Like, no, like it very possibly is happening, and that's okay. And it's normal, and it happens to everyone.
Yeah. And it's okay to validate the feelings of, I don't feel comfortable in my body right now. Instead of saying, oh, well, you look great. Like, don't worry about it. It's not like, validate their feelings.
Just be like, yeah.
I get it.
I don't feel good either.
Yeah.
That was me last week.
That was me last week. It was two minutes ago when I couldn't keep my hair right.
But even just like being able to say to like a friend, a trusted adult, anyone, be like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't feel good today. Like, for girls, like, even just be like saying, yeah, like, I'm getting my period, so like I'm not feeling great right now. And not being like, oh, you're getting your period? Like, you can't talk about that. Like, what if a boy hears? It's like, it happens.
Yep.
You don't feel good. Yeah.
And that's
and move on.
and that's okay. And and thanks you for sharing, because now I also feel like I can share, like, yeah, me neither. Today's kind of not the best. And on the flip side, if someone feels great, awesome. Celebrate.
Yeah.
Celebrate with them.
All the power to you.
So we're running out of time for this episode. So we want to thank you guys for listening. We hope this was helpful. We encourage you to live your best unfiltered life.
And to like, subscribe, and share.
Yeah. Hit the bell somewhere. Bells? I don't know. Somewhere. And
Lucy knows.
Lucy, hit the bell. And if you are actually in a place where you're struggling and like you're really kind of going through and needed extra help, Kassia, where are some places that people could go?
Yeah. So one place local to Hamilton that does a lot of work in terms of body image is called Body Brave. They're located right downtown Hamilton. You can check them out on their website.
Sweet.
Another just good resource to have, especially if you're in contact with any kids, teenagers, if you are a teenager yourself, is the Kids Help Phone. You can call them at 1-800-668-6868 or text them at 686868. And they have 24/7 counselors available to talk about whatever's going on and just kind of listen and be there. There's also Coast for mental health crises in Hamilton, and that's 905-972-8338. And that's for anyone of any age. You can call them, talk to someone. They may send someone to come check in with you in person and just kind of go from there. So those are a couple of resources.
That's awesome. So if you need help, those are the resources you guys can reach out to. You can also reach out to us here at the Atwell Center.
Yes.
And so we want to thank you guys for tuning in. We want to thank you guys for listening to this episode, and we want to remind you to listen to the Real Talks episode, where we're going to continue to kind of wrestle with this idea of like what it looks like to live an unfiltered life, how to accept yourself, accept the body that you have, because the body that you have is awesome. So tune in next time. Thank you for joining us. And as always,
Don't forget to share.